What's up, guys? It is Ben with Ben's Election Predictions, and today I think I have my most exciting election video of the 2025 cycle here for you right now. We are going to be covering the New Jersey governor's race, which out of the three main elections of 2025, the New York City mayoral race, the Virginia governor race, I think this is going to be the most competitive, the most upset potential. And so I want to spend some time here today going over the race, going over the polls, going over the historical results of the race, how it's similar, how it's different, what the political environment is looking at now, and finally focusing on the Kalshi markets and where I think there might be alpha to be made. So let's dive right into this market or into this race. Okay, so first I just kind of want to briefly go over the candidates. Mickey Sherill is the Democratic nominee. She came out of a fairly competitive primary, but the establishment Democrats did kind of rally around her. She is a sitting congresswoman from the state of New Jersey, so she has decent name ID. She is kind of seen as a bit more of a moderate Democrat. She isn't a progressive, like, one indicator of kind of who's moderate versus who's more progressive was whether they voted for this like Charlie Kirk bill, kind of like in remembrance of him, Charlie Kirk, who's like the right wing commentator who was assassinated. It was like very, very sad. And, everyone kind of came together to condemn political violence in that moment, but only about half of the Democrats did. So Mickey Sherill did sign on to this. However, she did put out a statement afterwards saying that she like kind of disavowed Charlie Kirk's rhetoric. She's also like not endorsed Mamdani for the New York City mayoral race. So she's trying to keep some distance from the more progressive parts of the party. Jack Ciattarelli, that's an Italian name, he ran for governor in 2021 and he exceeded expectations by a lot. I think, Mickey Sherrill is kind of like your run of your mill Democratic candidate. I think probably a little bit worse than like Abigail Spanberger in Virginia. Jack Ciattarelli, maybe I'll just call him Jack. He, I think, is an incredible candidate in 2021, and I'll just kind of focus on this right now. No one was really looking at the New Jersey governor's race. Everyone's attention was on Virginia, where Glenn Youngkin won, but no one thought that the New Jersey governor's race was going to be competitive. I think there was a lot of factors that ended up making this be competitive because, New Jersey is a state that Joe Biden won by double digits. It's seen as a blue state. It hasn't voted for a Republican at the presidential level in a long time. But you can see here that Jack Ciattarelli exceeded expectations by around 5 points, and this is also looking at the Real Clear polling average, which tends to skew a little bit towards the right. So where are we at today in terms of the polling? So right now, we can see it's actually more competitive than it was in 2021. During a when you had an unpopular Democratic president in Joe Biden. So if you saw the same polling error that you saw in 2021, Jack would win by just under 1 point. If you take that 5 point polling error, apply that to the 4 point advantage that Cheryl has right now, you get a Jack plus one. Obviously, when we talk about like overperforming or underperforming the polls, we are talking about the spread because you can see in 2021 the polls almost nailed kind of like what Phil Murphy, who was the incumbent Democrat, was going to get, but it underestimated Jack's margin by around 5 or 6 points. And so I think this time you aren't going to see as big of a polling error. if we just look at some of the more high quality polls for the New York Times, we can see that we see about like a +6, +7, or plus 5 to +7 average. And then if we kind of include some maybe the more lower quality right wing polls like Trafalgar, Qantas Insights, um, we get an average of 4.1. And the Hill and the Emerson is actually not a right wing poll, but you can see that was tied 43 to 43, so they weren't pushing a lot of undecided. So, where do I think this race stands today? And I'll get into this in more detail. I think this is probably going to be between a +3 to +6 Mickey Sherill race. And I think if I had to give a little bit more specificity of that, I would say between 4 and 6 or 5 and 6. And let me explain to you the reason why. So, we're in a cycle in 2025 that I think is going to resemble 2017 more. And you can see in 2017, the polls were almost dead on. And you had Phil Murphy, who was running for governor for the first time, win by double digits. I don't think that you're going to see this time. Phil Murphy is actually an incredibly unpopular Democratic governor. And Jack has actually been trying to tie Mickey Sherrill to him, because Jack actually has higher favorabilities than the incumbent Democratic mayor in a bluer state. But okay, so like we saw in 2017, it was +15, and now New Jersey has shifted to the right. If we look at the Cook, um, this is kind of looking at the state partisan index. This is a state that like Barack Obama twice and Joe Biden won by double digits. But in this last cycle, New Jersey was actually closer than Virginia, and you can see at the state level, it is D+4. Um, so, and honestly, I think you have two forces that are going to either pull this D+4 to the right or to the left. So what's going to push it to the left is we're in a cycle where Trump is the president. He's an unpopular president. He's even more unpopular in New Jersey than he is nationwide. And it's an off cycle, non presidential year. And you see that Republicans tend to perform worse, because the Democrats typically now have more of the higher propensity voters. So that would suggest, okay, so maybe instead of D+4, it's D+8. But however, on the other side of this coin, Jack is just such a good candidate, and I think candidate quality matters to the point where if it's just a generic Democrat and a generic Republican in the year 2025, we might see that D+8. But I think Jack, honestly, he shifts it back to where we get right at this kind of D+4. And the reason why like Virginia's different, like I said Spanberger was probably going to win this race by like an average of like 12 points. I think you shift 4 points to the left for like the Trump factor, it being an off cycle, so it's D+7, and then you shift another 5 points to the left because of just how bad of a candidate Sears is. So and because Abigail Spanberger is a pretty good candidate, so you can see that like when you're trying to model out elections, there are multiple factors. You can build models with like all these different variables, but candidate quality matters, and I think that is the biggest difference between the New Jersey and Virginia governor's race. And the last thing that I just want to touch on, I actually think this is going to be very similar to the New York governor's race in like 2022. It's going to be different because Trump's president now and Biden was president, but you have a pretty similar dynamic where like Lee Zeldin was seen as a very strong candidate in a blue state, and I think Jack is kind of fits the same profile. And this was polling to be about 7 points, and Lee Zeldin outperformed the polls by about 1 point. I think here, you could see Jack outperform the polls by 1 point, but I think four or five or six is like probably right, just because we're in a Trump um, presidency year. But you see that the ending margin ended up being around 6 or 7, which matched pretty closely, what the partisan divide is of New York State. And I think just because New Jersey is about 3 or 4 points to the right, while you saw this 7 point race in New York in 2022, I think you get to around that 4 to 5 point race in New Jersey in 20. Okay, guys, so let's now shift to the Cauchy odds right here. Um, if we look at the overall race, we can see that it's more competitive than like the Virginia governor's race or the New York City mayoral race. But it's not as competitive as it was a bit earlier. Um, I think where the value is here, well, it's not as sure of a bond as like the New York City mayoral race or the Virginia governor's race. I still think there's value in picking Democratic Party yes here, betting on Mickey Sherill or Jack no. I think the fair value of this probably right now is between 85 and 90. I think that's where it's going to trend towards election night. Um, so I think you can make a bit of margin there, and then if you want to hold through election night, you can get about a 15 to 20% return there. In terms of the margin, this is going to be a really interesting market because like I feel pretty confident in my position for the Virginia governor's race. I just feel like I have a pretty good feel for that race. I think Spanberger is going to win by over 12 points, which means I really only have to, bet in two brackets here. Here, it's tough. I would probably want to buy 2 to 4, 4 to 6, and 6 to 8. So I get that 2 to 8 margin. And I mean, where I frankly think it's going to be is between 4 and 5 points. So I actually do get a bit of buffer there. Um, and I don't know what the exact prices will be when I post that, but you can get that for around 40 cents. So if I think maybe fair value of that is like 60 to 70 cents, I think you're getting a pretty good return there. You should always be checking for arbitrage opportunities. So like for instance, you can get Republican Party yes for 82 cents here, but like in the margin market, it's priced at 84 cents. So like you could get Republican yes here at 17 cents instead of paying 19 cents over here. So you like always want to be on the lookout for some price discrepancies like that. Um, Other than that, I really don't have any like insane alpha to like share here, other than I think the margin's going to be between 2 and 8 points, and if you had to force me to do it, I'd probably say between like 4 and 6, 4 and 7. So I like definitely understand why 18 is the highest price bracket here, but like I think this long tail, like these are a bit overpriced, and so I think you can get 11 cents here and 11 cents here for like pretty good value. Um, will Mickey Sherrill outperform the polls? I I'm not going to play this market just simply because I don't know where the polls are going to land. And I think while Spanberger is probably pretty likely to outperform the polls, I think because of Jack's like very good candidate quality and like the campaign he's gonna run, he's like been pulled to winning independents, which like you would think is like, oh, if he's winning independents, he's gonna win the race. No, the the turnout's gonna be more Democrat heavy, and so that's why I think Mickey Sherrill still like wins the race. Though like don't have a position on whether she's going to outperform the uphold, since we are looking at the margin of victory rather than just the straight vote share. In terms of the larger margin of victory here, I think this race is right. It's near bonded. I'm not playing this market. If I could get in for a better price, I would. But like I just feel, for instance, better about Mickey Sherill winning the race. That's priced at what, like 82 cents, and I would prefer to have that the than this market, because like I think there is the chance, just because like Virginia is to the right of New Jersey just on a baseline level. Like if we look at that Cook report, that just, there's a ton of Democratic turnout, and like the New Jersey race ends up being more of a landslide for Mickey Sherill, and then like potentially the Virginia governor's race like becomes more competitive. Like I don't believe in reverse coattails really, but you could see some motivation for Republicans to turn out slightly. I don't really see it. I think this is probably going to result Virginia governor is the larger margin of victory, but I would say fair value is probably like 85 cents. So I'm not buying here. I think this market's pretty interesting, and I think there is, like, while it's not a near or like while it's not a perfect arbitrage opportunity, I do think it is a near perfect arbitrage opportunity. If you look at what the Democratic sweep entails, it's the Virginia governor, Virginia House of Delegates, New Jersey governor elections, and Mamdani winning New York City. If you look at all these markets independently, you can see Mamdani's at 92%, Virginia governor 93%, Virginia House delegates 93%. So if you're baking these in as being bonds near locks, then there is a 5 cent differential between the New Jersey election and the Democratic sweep. And why I think this is the best way to look at it is because these markets are correlated. So while Virginia and New Jersey are different states, they're pretty close to each other. They have similar demographics. If, for instance, Mickey Sherill outperforms the polls in New Jersey, you would expect the same thing in Virginia. And like you're obviously going to see some price differences there, but it's just kind of like the most likely outcomes in the 2024 presidential election was Trump to sweep all the swing states, or Kamala Harris to sweep all the swing states. If you look at like the probability Nate Silver did an analysis there, it's the same thing. And so that's why I think if you do think the Democrats are going to sweep, which I think they are, I think fair value of this frankly should be at like above 85 cents. This is where I'm putting my money, because I think that you can get a better margin there. Anyway, that was the video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please let me know your thoughts on this, whether you think I'm right. Just to summarize, I do think that Mickey Sherill probably wins this race between 2 and 8 points. If you forced me to put like a fine or two number on it, I'd probably say between 4 and 6. But please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thanks, guys.